All right, guys, I skipped a little bit ahead of this today. It's Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists. Now, there's a lot of things that get heated in here, so let's watch.
You're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
Don't be a smartass.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him. Hello there. I'm Dr. Jordan Peterson.
For those of you who don't know who this guy is, he's basically a huge nothing ball or nothing burger, however you want to say it. But he basically just gets into arguments with people and doesn't even actually have a stance. If you think about it, in the moment, you might think that he's saying something, but when you come back and reflect on it, you're just like, what is he even talking about? And even some of the comments say that too. Like, for example, here, another one. To confuse the enemy, first confuse yourself.
I'm a clinical psychologist, a professor emeritus at the University of Toronto, an author, a podcaster, public speaker, and today I'm surrounded by 25 atheists. My first claim, atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting.
Good afternoon, Dr. Peter.
I feel like that was some musical chairs action right there. That one person got the chair, and now everybody is just now they gotta wait.
Peterson.
How are you doing?
So this claim here that atheists don't know what they're rejecting. My background is in studying to become a traditional Catholic priest, daily mass, daily rosary, going on long retreats, deep into the magisterium and biblical
Whoa,
hermeneutics.
what happened
I
to the
was
video?
thoroughly in it. And it seems like I do know what I'm missing. Is there something that I missed over years of study, both this issue formally and living out religion so deeply?
Well, you obviously feel that you missed something when you were practicing for the priesthood.
Am I the only one who doesn't understand what he just said? I feel like my brain's attention span just like kind of withered away. So when I was trying to understand what he was saying, I was like, what? Kind of had to go back a couple times.
Aim was off then, so
And
there's
so-
always the possibility that it's still off now.
What was off about my aim in the first place?
I don't know. That might take a long time to figure out. But
Then it seems kind of like this no true Scotsman type of fallacy in which you're the arbiter of people's aims and how they understand those aims to be. How is it that you can claim that people don't know something that you know about their life despite not having met them?
well, it's obviously a generic claim, just like the atheist claim that there's no God is
Yeah.
a generic claim.
Well, not entirely. I kind of have to disagree on that. And I still don't fully grasp where Jordan Peterson is coming from with that. But I think that, actually thinking about this, you might have to come back.
In your case, it would have to be specified more, and I'm not claiming to understand what was going on in your mind, but
Yeah.
my experience with atheists is twofold. Is that they have a very reductive notion of what constitutes God, let's say in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they've often been hurt by someone who was religious or by the religious enterprise or perhaps by God himself, so to speak, and that's left
Yeah.
them with an animus.
But I think that you have a
Here's my take on that. So I do think that if you believe in a God, you have some sort of spiritual connection with something at least. I believe in God. I do consider the fact that I have a connection. If you are an atheist, I completely understand that you may not feel that way or you have some sort of take on it. But me personally, I think, coming from the standpoint of someone who has questioned their own religion, I do kind of understand where Jordan's coming from.
reductive view of what atheism is. You've defined religion so broadly to include any sort of having aim in life, any sort of cultural archetypes, or having a metaphorical substrate. And atheism to you is a very specific type of like three people in the world that are these Raskolnikov type of, they want to get away with a perfect murder. It seems like you have the reductive view of what an atheist is.
Well, let's start with your claim. How do you define the God that you're rejecting? Like, what is God to you? You studied in the church, you found that unsatisfactory. How would you characterize what you rejected?
I think the average Christian believer, when they say that they're Christian and they believe, they mean some sort of God that is all powerful, all perfect, is somehow involved in the matters of this world, and that we look to them through wisdom and with Logos incarnate in Christ. And it also seems like you don't believe in religion in the way that the average Christian says that they believe in religion. And there are as many gods out there as there are believers, because everybody has mutually exclusive and different views of what God is. So it seems
Well,
like...
if everybody had mutually exclusive views of what God is, no one could speak to each other. The mere fact of communication presumes a commonality of assumption and definition. And it's certainly not the case that I regard any archetypal manifestation whatsoever as equally religious. So that's
Basically, in a nutshell, from all the mumbo jumbo that this man has just said, basically, you have different religions, you have different viewpoints, but they all kind of connect to the same thing.
that's not a real claim. Let me give you an example. For
Precisely.
example, there's a sub-narrative in the story of Moses where Moses is rewarded with a glimpse of God. Okay, and that's one of the ways that God is characterized in the Old Testament stories.
Yes.
Now, Moses is a faithful servant of God and a good man. At least that's the case within the confines of the story.
One possible
It's
interpretation.
the case within the confines of the story, obviously.
Well, not obviously. When we look at the Bible can't precisely say anything because there are so many different exegetical and hermeneutic views of this particular book, and that everybody has everybody has disagreed historically on, it seems like, even the most benign detail about a book this big. And it seems like you can only say that the Bible says something if you first presuppose that it's univocal.
Yeah, if you take a look at every single kind of religious text out there, you do have to understand that these were made so many years ago and they can have their own and different interpretations. But this is also the same reason why we have things like churches or, mosques, things like that help people come together and be able to understand what their religion is about and educate themselves a little bit more. But on the flip side of that, if you look at it from a very, very strict viewpoint, you start to kind of get to the point where you might take it way too literally. And I think that is a bit of a problem. Like, you'll have sides like extremists, like Islamic extremists, for example, who, the Quran is their Bible, that is the law. And that is, if you take it, for example, like the whole Iranian situation, they're a theocracy. So the Muslim law is the law for them, even though it was made thousands of years ago, but that's how they go about it today. And I think that's what can dictate someone who thinks in terms of a more progressive light or somebody who thinks in a much more conservative light.
So your claim essentially is that Moses in the Old Testament plays the role of a villain or is irrelevant? Because the alternative claim
I'm
is
saying that we
he's
can't
good.
know, because we can't talk to those authors.
If you are going to start with the presupposition that there's nothing I can say about any of these stories that you're not going to disagree with from the perspective that there are multiple potential competing claims, then I can't speak with you. So
And we also have a short time here, so I want to get to the core of what you're arguing here, and I'd love if we could...
I would actually like to know what he's arguing here, because I still don't know. I feel like he's trying to say it in such a way where it's like, you can't look at it at such a narrow point of view, otherwise you're just gonna yell at me. But at the same time, I can't argue about it, but I will also argue about it. I'm just like, what is going on here?
the core of what I'm arguing is that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. So I'm trying to give you an example of what's being rejected.
I like how this guy's over here like, sir, please pick me. I'd like to speak now.
And its complexity. Okay, so God rewards Moses with a glimpse of the divine. So this is a definition of the God that atheists are hypothetically rejecting.
A possible one.
I said I didn't say the. I said
That is possible, yes.
What? That sounds like it's such a granular technicality where it's like, actually, I said it this way. Just one word difference. Therefore, you're wrong.
Okay. So despite the fact that Moses is a stellar character and he's had a long and difficult life and can withstand a lot of difficulty and travail, God puts him between two cliffs. So he can just see a crack of what's in front of him. And when God walks by, he allows him to see his back. Okay, so the implication of that story is that the divine is fundamentally unknowable, it's a pinnacle experience, and that people in their finitude have to be shielded from a comprehensive vision of the basis of reality. Well, that's not the God that's defined in that manner, right? It's not a simple personification. It's not a simple old man in the sky. It's something that, in its essence, is unknowable and overwhelming. And that isn't, in my experience, the God that's defined by atheists who are attempting.
I actually wonder what these flags are for. If you guys know, let me know in the comments below. Does everybody have to raise it, or is it more of like, raise to raise, and once the majority comes up, then you can do it?
Attempting to undermine the story. I mean, it's the same claim, for example, that you're a finite creature and that you face something that in the final analysis is unknowable, and that you have to establish a relationship with it regardless of your inability to perceive or even withstand perceiving the whole. Okay, is there a problem with that?
I mean, the problem is that when we look at, famously, when you've been asked, do you believe in God, the question becomes, what do we mean by God? And in the Bible, it's not even clear the biblical authors know what God is, because Yahweh has historically emerged from an early storm god, a deity that doesn't exhaust the category of deity, and that has changed over the Old Testament. Does God have physicality? Does God not have physicality? It seems like, yes, if you define religion to mean anybody that has an aim, anybody that looks at the unknown, anybody who wants to go from chaos to order is inherently religious, then yes. But also in the same way, I could define atheist as somebody who doesn't dogmatically believe in a religion, or somebody who doesn't regularly attend religious services or belong to a denomination. To help especially the audience kind of like boil this down, there was a lot of words there. That the central claim is that
You see this guy right here? He's gonna be basically the one that annoys the hell out of Jordan Peterson. Probably the most out of everybody here.
we exist somewhere between the finite and the infinite.
A central claim.
A central claim is that we exist somewhere between the finite and the infinite.
No,
Is that?
I said that we were finite and we had to establish a relationship with the infinite.
Yeah, then in that case, then we're all religious, but then I can do the same thing and define one particular element of atheism. It seems like we both have a reductive view of what the other side looks like, to the point where a conversation seems incoherent, and not just incoherent, but not in the way that the average Christian understands Christianity to be.
Do you have a
Okay,
problem
let's
with
pause there. Sorry.
Oh my God, thank God. I feel like after that, from what I boiled down from what Jordan Peterson said was, if you are a human being, you're not going to be able to perceive what God is seeing. And from the atheist perspective, it's why can't I perceive that in that same way? Which is more of a question that can or can't be answered on both sides, regardless of what they believe in. But I think I'm going to stop here today. This was a pretty good episode. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this as a series. So stay tuned for the next one. Come back tomorrow. I'll have another one just for you guys.